For this week, we're calling Michigan the Titanic program of college football because they are going down.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners is here. We'll have Trent Condon of Locked On Hawkeyes as well because it is Cyhawk week. How does that one play out in Ames? Can Iowa State finally win on their home field? And best bets of the week. I'm starting with Oregon State. I'm going to do it because, boy, they better win in Corvallis this week. That all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Football season is not just around the corner, it is here. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Jay, Oklahoma comes home again, and they're playing Michigan, and I like the Sooners a lot in this particular spot. It is one of my best bets of the week at Oklahoma minus 5.5. I think on paper, everything favors the Sooners in this spot. I talked about on Wednesday how they've got to win this game. Brent Venables has got to win this game, or it could be a long year that results in him maybe not just on the hot seat, but out of a job. Because if you can't win this game, I know it's only week 2, but it's week 2 for Michigan as well. And you have got a true freshman quarterback who's making his first start on the road. Ask Arch Manning how easy it is to make your first start on the road in your career. Second start overall. But I just think on paper, everything should favor Oklahoma in this spot. I'm taking Oklahoma, swallow 5.5 points, which is the line according to our friends at FanDuel. What do you think?
No, I'm in the exact same boat as you. I think Oklahoma should win this game. I like them as the favorite at the 5.5. I'm taking that as well, mainly because the biggest thing with this game is I mean, you kind of pointed it out. You know, Michigan starting a true freshman quarterback, first time on the road in SEC territory at a stadium that typically rocks out. So they're going to have him borderline in a blender trying to call plays. I was on our college football kickoff show on Amazon TV, and Coach Gary Patterson, who used to coach TCU, talked about how he couldn't even talk to his assistants on the sideline when he was in Norman back in the day. And so with that, you know, Sherrone Moore's going to come home, realize, yeah, this place is pretty rocking. Got to find ways to keep his quarterback calm. Now, we know Michigan's going to focus on the one thing that typically travels, run games. And a lot of people are asking questions about Oklahoma. Okay, Oklahoma, you gave up 117 yards to Illinois State. What are you going to be able to do against a running back like Justin Haynes, who ran for 159 yards in their first week against New Mexico? Well, we've seen Justice Haynes. He played at Alabama last year, so we got a little bit of a taste of him. And Alabama did not run all that great. While at the same time, in that Illinois State game, remember, there was no drive longer than 24 yards in that game. Oklahoma was testing out a lot of stuff. We played a lot of young players because was that game ever in jeopardy? No. Sometimes you need to go ahead and give people real snaps and see if they can follow instructions. Same thing with Michigan. That game was not in jeopardy. They were out there putting players out to see what they look like in game scenarios and if they can follow instructions. And so in this one, I expect the best from both sides, but I think Oklahoma will be fine stopping the run game.
I think that if they're able to hold Michigan, I'm not kidding here, under 175 rushing yards, anything under that, I don't know how Michigan is going to put up so many enough points to win the game. Now, it's not as if the Wolverines defense is terrible just because they lost a bunch of guys from last year. I like the coaching staff. They have some good personnel on that side of the ball. I don't think it's the same. You know, Michigan was one of my favorite under bets coming into the year. Their preseason win total was 9.5. I think they are overrated as the number 14 team in the country. I think that is pure brand bias. I don't think they're bad. They weren't technically bad last year, but I think this is kind of a prep year for them. I think 2026 is when Michigan is fully ready to pop. I like that they're starting Bryce Underwood because that fits with that trajectory really well to be a full-fledged Big Ten title contender next season. But I think they are still a year away. And on the perimeter, Jay, I think this Oklahoma secondary can feast because Bryce Underwood, yeah, he's got a great arm. He can make way better throws than Davis Warren. I'm not, you can't deny that, or else you're just denying reality at that point in time. So
you're a hater.
I think you can recognize that the Michigan passing attack has a higher ceiling than last year, and then also recognize, yeah, well, when you start at the floor, you don't have to have a very high ceiling for it to be above where it was a year ago. So I think he can make a couple of plays, but I think that Norman crowd is going to be rocking. Brent Venables' defense should be really good and one of the best in all of college football this year. I just don't see how, barring a Bryce Underwood coming out party, just a spectacular show. I mean, Jaren Kiave-Sangapolotele level performance, what he did to Oregon State last week, barring something like that, I don't think Michigan can control this game on the ground the way they do to some of their other opponents. If they get, over 175 in the 200-yard rushing range on the ground, okay, like now Oklahoma's got problems, and Michigan can control the game and play one of those low-scoring battles, and we know Sharon Moore's good situationally. I just don't think that this is the spot for that to happen, and Oklahoma's favored by 5.5 for a reason.
Yeah, and I look at this game similar to the Tennessee game last season at home. Of course, Oklahoma lost that game 25-15, but if you don't give a fumble back after causing a fumble, literally the next play 2 times in the game, not once, but twice, you probably beat Tennessee as well. They held Tennessee to 151 yards of rushing in that game. Dylan Sampson rushed for 1,400 yards last year, only had 92 on 24 carries, 3.8 yards a carry. They were stuffing him. Deshaun Gibson came in there with a little bit better at 4.1 yards a carry, 65 yards, but that was kind of the recipe for Oklahoma was, you're going to try to run on us. We're going to force you to get rid of the ball a lot more than you want to. And Nico, he had one big pass play, but I think the secondary this year is actually better in comparison. And so there was a lot of, you're not going anywhere against us. So for Oklahoma, the bigger thing is when you saw the beginning of this game, I mean, you go, if you take away that one big play that Tennessee had, you're going 3-3 at the end of the first quarter, and Tennessee's kind of struggling to actually move the ball the way they want to. And so that's my expectation. Oklahoma should be able to cause some turnovers in this game. You're going to see some exotic looks that's going to make Bryce Underwood think a lot harder than he wants, similar to Nico Iamaleava. And when you see an exotic blitz come through and you see him get hit.
That was close. That was like 90% there. There was an extra syllable, but
Iamaleava. Yeah. Anyway,
Nico.
So with that being said, the bigger thing for Oklahoma is causing turnovers, making Bryce think a lot more than he wants to, than probably Sharon Moore wants him to in his only second appearance and second start total, first start on the road as a college quarterback. The defense is going to be flying. I think the defense is going to be just as good, if not a little bit better than last year.
Let's talk about Oklahoma's quarterback to wrap the segment before we make our predictions, because this is also the first real test for John Mateer. In his time as a starting quarterback, he had a couple of good Power 4 wins last year against Texas Tech and Washington that were bowl teams in big leagues. Mostly, though, he played against the Mountain West. And last week, Illinois State is in the Missouri Valley.
Something like that, FCS, yeah.
Yeah,
one of the better FCS teams.
I'd have to double check. I should know that off the top of my head as an FCS play-by-play guy. But anyway, I'll get that in a moment. There's a non-zero amount of interest for me watching John Mateer in this game because this is a top 20 defense in college football. And if John Mateer and the rest of those Oklahoma weapons, which I think are more myriad on paper than Michigan's, another reason I like the Sooners in this game, if they're able to really click here, I think there's going to be some serious optimism in Norman. If it's a struggle, but you find a way to squeak out a win, not the end of the world, but there'll definitely still, I think, be some questions.
Yeah, but this is the game that you want to see what Mateer is able to do. In the Illinois State game, you could tell that he was not trying to actually run the ball, and it is Missouri Valley Conference in FCS, so you were very spot on. Congratulations.
Yeah.
We're going to get you an award for remembering all of that, but I digress.
Conference affiliation sicko over here, Jay.
Yeah, you are a sicko when it comes to that because I am not that. Well, I'm close enough. I kind of had an idea, but I digress. John Mateer is definitely going to have to show us because in that game, he did not really run the ball. You didn't see him really make attempts. The only design run you saw was when he scored that touchdown. For the most part, he was kind of sitting back there, throwing the ball, kind of playing catch in the backyard with his teammates. It was really a good way to see the chemistry and see the timing that he's going to have with these players going forward this season. And so Michigan's going to be the first test. Again, you said he had 2 good Power 5 wins. Texas Tech was not a bad team last year. They weren't the best, but they were not bad at by any means. I think they were 8-5 last year. So
they were an 8-win team. They weren't exactly known for their defense last year.
They weren't.
They
and
were
Washington was okay.
Washington was a bowl team.
Exactly, and they beat Michigan last year, right? If we're going to do like this, the wins.
Transitive property.
There you go, transitive property. I love that.
Mateer beat Washington. Washington beat Michigan last year. Therefore, Mateer will beat Michigan now. Are we doing this right?
I'm not going that way. I'm more so saying I think that the team in Oklahoma, and you're going to get Jay Nod back. So now you get your running back. He's about 100%, and that's what Brent Venables kind of talked about in his presser. So this is going to be intriguing to see exactly how Michigan game plans for not only a running Mateer, but a running I.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun game. It's a game day game, and I think it absolutely should be. Over-under set at just 44.5. I think with that Oklahoma defense, there's a decent chance. In week 1, Jay, I was telling everybody, hey, go under. Offenses aren't set yet. Unders hit it like a 64-ish% clip if you just blindly bet them across all of FBS college football last week. So I eventually that's going to shift and equal out. But with these two teams, I don't know that it does. I'll take Oklahoma 24-13 over Michigan.
I got Oklahoma 25-15, similar to the Tennessee score. I've been sticking to it. I'm going to stick to it for the rest of the way.
I'm sure Michigan fans will love hearing me fade the Wolverines. Again, Jay Smith, Locked On Sooners. We love hearing from him as always. I love rivalry games, and we've got one this week. Oh, boy. Oh, no. Iowa's going to try the forward pass again. First, this episode brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. So last week, Oklahoma did get a good performance from John Mateer. And yeah, it was Illinois State, but guess what? You still want your quarterback to look good throwing the ball in the same offensive system he was running at Washington State last year, and indeed he did. Last week for Michigan, Justice Haynes had a good day on the ground and helped propel them to a week 1 win over New Mexico. These guys delivered for Oklahoma and Michigan respectively. Now they'll square off on Saturday, but they delivered, and DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive, and that is what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. You can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, standard all-wheel drive, and every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes every drive feel special. Attention to detail is what they're all about. That's what coaches are doing this week, figuring out X's and O's, getting every single thing they can right for their teams to win. And Mazda is delivering those details for you. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. The Cyhawk Trophy is on the line in Ames this weekend. Trent Condon of Locked On Hawkeyes is here to discuss the big game that suddenly feels like a pretty good barometer for what the rest of Iowa's season is going to be. Because you know what? You can write off one bad week early in the season as, you know what, it was early, we hadn't figured things out yet, we needed to make a lineup change. Oregon got pushed by Idaho on their home field last year and beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten, for goodness sake. So changes can happen. Now, allow me to note a stark difference between the Oregon and Iowa programs for just a moment here, Trent. One of them has shown a consistent propensity to produce offenses that can utilize the forward pass. One of them is Iowa. So when they go for 48 passing yards as a team last week against a school that most of us can't point out on a map, this is a concern when you're going up against one of the best teams in the Big 12, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Iowa State absolutely is that kind of team. Another major difference between Oregon and Iowa. Iowa has 4 national championships. The Ducks don't have any. But that aside, the passing game was brutal.
I had that coming. I had that coming.
It was, but people see the 44 yards passing and think, all right, you look at it, they ran for over 300 yards. They just did that. It wasn't just the 44 yards passing because, if you go 4 or 5 for 44 yards, that's okay. That wasn't the case. Mark Gronowski looked awful. He had one of their transfer wide receivers wide open in the end zone. Nobody between him and the end zone. It's a 15-yard pass. He cut it in half. A bounce pass into the end zone to try to get it there. He had a screenplay set up to the right, a little swing out there. He overshot it by a good 5 yards. His second pass of the game was just a simple stop route, and he missed it terribly. That's where the concern lies. Even afterwards that he hit 6 of his last 7 passes, only one of them went more than 10 yards in the air. So there are deeper concerns than just the statistical profile that is hideous in its own right with the 44 yards. There are some major concerns. Now, here is a positive. This is not Spencer Petras, who was not only an awful quarterback, he was also a statue back there and couldn't run. Mark Gronowski, that dude can run. So that's, I guess, the one positive that you can take out of it. You saw the physicality that he plays with, the ability in the run game that he's going to have throughout the course of the season. Look, they're going to have to throw this year in order to win games. You're not going to be able to beat an Oregon, an Indiana, a Penn State, heck, this weekend in Iowa State without any ability to throw the football. But that was a major concern coming out of that one. Not just the yardage total, how bad it looked.
Yeah, and the hot take, surface of the sun, scorching hot take I've got for the battle against the Cyclones this week. Whoever runs for more yards is going to win the game. Whoa! Where have we ever heard that in a football game? The reason I say it specifically, though, Trent, is Iowa State, in that Week 0 matchup with Kansas State in the first half, looked like their offensive line was getting overwhelmed. I think there is actually a chance for this Iowa front four to disrupt Rocco Becht, because the first half of that game, I was not impressed whatsoever. But in the second half, they settled down. In the second half, Iowa State got their ground game going. And that's when Rocco Becht became more dangerous. That was when their offense looked like it was in a much better rhythm and flow. And that started up front with creating running lanes there. I think you can point to a number of different things as being a key in this one. As good as Iowa's defense is, Trent, year in and year out, I just don't think with how Gronowski and the offense look to be operating at this moment that you can expect them to give you an above average performance against a good Iowa State defense, that got hurt against Kansas State with what? A big downfield shot. And otherwise, I thought actually played pretty well for the most part. So that Iowa defense is going to have to take away the run, because if Iowa State starts to get some balance, they could hit 20 points. I don't know how Iowa gets to 20 points in this game.
Well, I think you go bring up a really important part. And I don't think it's just individually Iowa. If they have 150 and Iowa State has 125, Iowa automatically wins. But if Iowa State has some semblance of a running game, yes, then I believe the Hawkeyes are going to be in trouble. I think this Iowa front four will cause some problems up front. This offensive line hasn't been great, certainly throughout the course of the season for Iowa State, and they had to bring in extra tight ends in order to do that. Playing bully ball against Iowa, it can work against Kansas State and a lot of new faces up front. I don't think it's going to work against the Hawkeyes. I think if Iowa defensively is going to be very successful, though, really you have to derail Rocco Becht. You look at his numbers throughout the last year and a half. When he gets pressure in his face, like most quarterbacks, he struggles. But the gap between where he is without pressure as opposed to pressure, it is as significant as you're going to find in college football. So the belief for me is Iowa's going to have to do it, but not by blitzing. They have to do it with the front four because he is excellent against the blitz. He's been dynamite again this season. If Iowa's going to do it, it has to be with the front four to get Rocco off his spot. And, of course, Iowa's going to have to run the football here. I don't think the Cyclones are going to have a ton of success running the ball in this game.
So the over-under, to nobody's surprise, is a touch low compared to the other games this weekend. I mean, you look at the Illinois-Duke game, which is a premier matchup in college football this week. You've got an over-under in the low 50s, and I actually think that game is going to go over. You look at the over-under in this game, Trent, according to our friends at FanDuel, this is not going to be one of my best bets of the week because there are not enough points going either way in a rivalry game for me to feel super confident in that. And I'll get to my best bets on the third segment of today's show. But 42.5 is the over-under, meaning Vegas is looking at this matchup and seeing something in the low to mid 20s at most, high teens for the other team, kind of a 2017 game, a 21-20 game. If it were to go under, frankly, I kind of think that could be high score. This Iowa State defense is not to be messed around with. I think they were really impressive in what is the best measuring stick you have for the Cyclones so far this season against Kansas State. Certainly they had some things to clean up. Who the heck doesn't? After week, even teams that win. Ohio State had the win of the year so far in college football against Texas, and you looked at them and went, yeah, you've got a long ways to go, but it's a good thing you won the game. And that's what you can say about Iowa State, I think, to, frankly, a lesser extent for what they're trying to accomplish, because I think that that's a team that can go win the Big 12, was in the conference championship game a season ago. The win against Kansas State was certainly huge, but I just think in this spot, Iowa's ceiling offensively to me in this game feels like 20 points. That I think is the ceiling based on what we saw last week. Because I think there's a little more in the tank, but man, really hard to have confidence right now.
So you look back at Iowa's, they've won 6 straight games in Jack Trice stadiums. They go back to 2011, the last time the Cyclones won in their own building. And a big piece of that has been that Iowa's been able to score in different ways. They've been able to score with special teams. They've been able to score with defense. And that's why I can't just put that 20 mark out there, because Iowa's done it. Jack Campbell taking in a touchdown 4 years back. 2 years ago was Sebastian Castro picking off Rocco Beck and bringing it in. Special teams have been dominant for Iowa. So because of that, I can't put that cap there. But you mentioned the total. I mean, 41. This is like Christmas
42
Day.
and a half. 42 and a half.
42 and a half. I mean, remember, Iowa played the game just 2 years ago against Nebraska. The total closed at 24 and a half.
Oh!
And it went under. 13-10, Iowa with the victory in that one. How about that same year, Iowa plays Rutgers. 27 and a half was the number. It hit under 22-0 Iowa victory in that one. So these low totals, they don't scare us one iota, but do remember that Iowa, it's about the defense. It's about making plays with the defense, and Iowa's special teams is also elite. The returner of the year last year in college football, the Jet Award winner, Caden Weechin, he is back for another season. They are tremendous there. They had a 55-yard field goal here. So Iowa, this is how they do it. They do it in different ways. You can't just strictly look at the offense and the scoring when you're talking about an Iowa team total.
When you said the word iota, I feel like there's a pun with Iowa in there somewhere. But yeah, I'm not corny enough to try to make it because it didn't immediately click in my head. But it's out there. I like Iowa State to win this game at home. I just can't get behind the Hawkeyes after what I saw in week 1. If they had another game and showed some progress, then maybe. But, man, you're asking them to fix a lot against a team that I like and have preseason as rated as one of my top teams in the Big 12 this year. So I'll take Iowa State to win. I think it's ugly, but I'm gonna go 21-13. I'll take the Cyclones.
I'm a little bit more higher scoring than you, but we're in the same ballpark. I got Iowa State winning this one 23-17, maybe even a little bit more comfortable than that final score indicates. In fact, if you go back the last 20 years when Iowa State has won in this series, all the games have been by 3 points or less. So this would be an anomaly, even if they can win it by 6 or more. It's normally tight, and when it's tight, it's gone both ways, but Iowa State has been the only way they can win dating back to 2005 when they knocked off top 10 Iowa and Drew Tate 23-3.
Trent Condon, Locked On Hawkeyes. Appreciate the time. That's not one of my best bets of the week, but I have got 5 games that are my best bets for the week as you get ready for another college football Saturday. First, this episode brought to you by Upside. Locked On College Football fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Why? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas that you already needed. At first, you might think it's too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code football for a limited 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code football. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Check out the Upside app and start saving today. And if you want to get really ready for this weekend, you got to check out FanDuel because the NFL season is here. It has officially begun, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Everything you want for college football. If you think the picks you're going to hear later in today's show are just completely foolish, I'm out of my mind, I'm crazy, how could you possibly come down on that side of the line, Spencer? What are you thinking? How do you have a podcast, as I hear from people? Guess what? You can go put your money where your mouth is over at FanDuel. They've got college football, they've got the NFL, everything you could possibly want. You can spice up Saturdays and Sundays all season long. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Check them out at FanDuel.com. So this is going to become a regular thing on my Friday show. Didn't do it last week. Frankly, don't know why. Kind of slipped my mind. I was making picks on every game, but realized that's too many games to have gone into the numbers to make picks for. So best bets of the week. 500 straight up last week for me. 500 against the spread as well. So I don't know. I made an opening, call it a par. Bogey on a tough hole perhaps, but looking to bounce back this week. Let me start with a game that, boy, just needs to go Oregon State's way for no other reason. I think they're going to come out and play with their hair on fire is why I'm picking the Beavs. -3.5 against Fresno State. Oregon State last week, a disastrous, completely disastrous first game against Cal. A true freshman who had, per Pro Football Focus, their highest game grade for a true freshman's first game in the history of Pro Football Focus. So JKS carved them up on their home field. They are back at Reser Stadium before 2 straight on the road. Trent Bray is starting to get to the point where he could be coaching for his job. He is 5-8 so far as Oregon State's head coach. They started 4-1 last year, went 1-6 down the stretch. They lose a game that I and many others picked them to win week 1 against Cal. And even if they did lose, which of course they did, it shouldn't have been as bad as it was. There was a disagreement amongst the quarterback and coaching staff on the sideline. You know what? I think that's actually a good thing that there was some fire over there. Fresno State, first-year head coach Matt Entz. They've got E.J. Warren at quarterback, who is fine, but I don't think that Oregon State is unaware of how important this game is. I think you see a fire and a focus that is required because the next 2 games for Oregon State, at Texas Tech, number 23 team in the country, at Oregon, a top 10 team in the country. The likelihood you win one of those games, maybe you could stun Texas Tech, but on their home field, you can't expect that. And Trent Bray, after a 5-7 year, just cannot afford to start the season 0-4. So Oregon State, this opened at 2.5, moved to 3.5. I think Matt Entz is a really good coach. I think he can succeed at Fresno State, get them to be at least on the cusp of being a playoff team one day in the New World Pac-12. These teams will be conference foes next year. But give me Oregon State. I will swallow the 3.5 points. I think the Beavs win. I think that they cover there as well. Also, my game of the week. Mentioned this earlier in the show. Finally, the pick is here. Give me Oklahoma -5.5 against Michigan. Everything on paper here favors the Sooners. They're at home. They have the more experienced quarterback. I think they've got way more playmakers on offense. I do like Justice Haynes at running back for the Wolverines. I like their tight end. Bryce Underwood has got some serious promise, but he's not going up against New Mexico's defense this week. He's going up against Oklahoma on the road against Brent Venables in a game that Coach Venables simply has to win. He cannot afford to lose. I think he will get it done because I don't know where Michigan's explosive plays are coming from. And though I like the Michigan defense, they weren't exactly perfect week 1 against New Mexico, a program that's got a first-year head coach. It wasn't bad, but it certainly wasn't great. I think Oklahoma at home has got a little bit more offense. I think they cover the 5.5 and beat the Wolverines in the game of the week. Now, how about this one? My third favorite before a couple of underdogs. Penn State swallow 41.5 against FIU. First-year head coach for the Panthers. They played Bethune-Cookman in their first game of the year, beat them soundly, That's not exactly Penn State. I think the Nittany Lions in this spot, watch out for the backdoor cover. That's what happened last week against Nevada. I think Penn State leaves absolutely, positively, no doubt. FIU doesn't have anywhere close to the amount of talent that Penn State does. They are not the sort of Group of 5 program at this time that can go toe-to-toe with one of the 3 best teams in all of college football. And Penn State being, of course, at home gives me all the confidence in the world that they're going to go and win this game big. You could see like a 48-3. You could see the Penn State defense pitch a shutout in this spot. You've got the second week of Jim Knowles being there as Penn State's defensive coordinator. They didn't allow a touchdown until the starters were pulled last week. I worry about it, but you know what? 41.5 is a lot. I think Penn State will win and cover the 41.5. My 2 underdogs of the week, and I talked about these games earlier this week on the show. Absolutely, positively stoked to watch these games because they are really fun. They are really, really important. Let's start with Kansas, Missouri. The border war is back for the first time in 14 years. I'm taking Kansas plus 6.5. I think Missouri wins the game outright. I will take Kansas to cover the 6.5 points. Rule of thumb, in a rivalry game, when you have 2 teams that are not miles and miles apart in terms of a talent gap, which I don't think is what you have here, you can argue there's a gap. You can say Missouri's better. John Miller of Locked On Mizzou certainly feels that way. I don't think that gap is the size of the Grand Canyon. I think it's probably even smaller than the driving distance between these 2 schools. So I think that Kansas in a rivalry game like this can hang around and keep it close. I think Missouri wins, but I do think Kansas covers that 6.5 points because in a rivalry game, you take the points. And you know what? If Mizzou goes out and proves me wrong, you're going to hear me give them full faith and credit, not of the U.S. government, but of Spencer McLaughlin's respect here on Locked On College Football. So definitely Kansas plus 6.5. And the same line for my second underdog this week, I like Mississippi State plus 6.5 against Arizona State. Same thing here. Arizona State to me on serious upset alert. Mississippi State is not just a quarterback, or it doesn't just have a quarterback that is better than you'd think. In Blake Shapen, it's a name that most people are probably going to mock. They didn't look good in the first half last week. I get it. Teams can progress. They can level up. The track record so far of Jeff Lebby with Blake Shapen as his quarterback is you're going to get some production there. This game is being played in Starkville in front of the home fans. The cowbells will be a-ringing. And I think Arizona State finds a way to win because they've got a little bit more, a solid amount more continuity than does Mississippi State. But I don't think this is a game that was a 7-point contest in Tempe last year. I don't think this Arizona State team's quite where they were last year, but they're very close. But Mississippi State is better. Mississippi State as home. I will not be surprised in the slightest if Mississippi State goes on to pull this upset outright in what would be just a complete disaster for the Big 12. Not just for Kenny Dillingham, because that would remove any possibility of the Sun Devils being an at-large playoff team this season. But if one of your top teams cannot beat a bottom third SEC team, you perpetuate the cyclical narrative that the Big 12 is just far behind. The Big 12 can't keep up. The Big 12 can't do this. This is one of those games where there's not that much to gain for Arizona State, so much as there's something you're trying to avoid. And that is a sizable upset loss that would not look good on your own resume or your conference's resume. So, once again, 5 best bets of the week. I like Oregon State minus 3.5 at home against Fresno State, Oklahoma minus 5.5 against Michigan, Penn State swallowing 41.5 points against Florida International, Kansas plus 6.5 at Missouri, Mississippi State plus 6.5 against Arizona State. Cannot wait. Enjoy the football this weekend, everybody. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.